While Russia continues to carry out these terrorist attacks on Ukraine, there is something to be optimistic about. There's something that makes the cold a little bit better, and that is that the Kremlin today knows that it is cornered. The images that come from Ukraine show a population that is both defiant and strong, a population that is ready to accept the consequences of demanding freedom, for refusing the tyranny and slavery that Moscow offers. You've seen the videos, you've seen the photographs of the families that are huddled in the subway stations. Some subway stations in Ukraine are quite deep. Arsenalna station in Kyiv, it's 106 meters, 350 feet deep into the earth. And families pass night after night there to avoid being killed by Russian drones, by Russian missiles. But there is something else going on, and that is the fact that Russia's attacks are increasingly ineffective. These attacks at one point were highly effective. The fact is, when this war began, Ukraine virtually did not have air defense. But today, Ukraine is able to survive incredible attacks. Just look at this recent attack, where we saw 26 missiles as well as over 300 drones come down on Ukraine. Now, though that is an incredible number, Ukraine got through it. There were power outages at some points, and water was lost in other points, but they've come back. Kyiv itself had a major attack last week, and despite losing energy for most of the city and losing water, it's working back everywhere once again. This situation is controllable. Ukraine is not worried about losing. Rather, it's Moscow that increasingly has reasons to be concerned. Let's take a look at exactly what's going on, and why is today that Moscow is so worried. My name is Jason Smart. I am a special correspondent for the Kyiv Post, as well as being a national security advisor. The situation for Russia is becoming worse, as it does every single day. Russia, as we've discussed, is simply in an untenable situation. It's trying to wage a war using the tactics that it's used for hundreds of years. But Ukraine is not playing that game. Ukraine is not going to wage a war of attrition. Ukraine is fighting smarter. And one of the things that it's doing that's far smarter than what the Russians can do is that it is able to use new technologies to prevent Russian attacks. Look at these interceptor drones that are routinely used now to strike down the Russian drones, preventing Russia from killing civilians, preventing Russia from attacking critical infrastructure. These are a huge improvement, and these are changing the game. And incredibly enough, the videos you're seeing now are from drones, which we helped to finance. So as you know, we are fundraising for drones. If you'd like to contribute for life-saving drones for the Ukrainians, please see the first comment below, which I have pinned. And there is information about making a PayPal or bank transfer to help the Ukrainians gain life-saving drones. And there's just one other thing quickly. If you do not already, please subscribe to this channel. As you know, this channel exists for one reason, to get out the truth of what is happening here, where I am, where I live, in Ukraine, as well as what's really happening inside of Russia. And today, we're very close to reaching our goal of 250,000 subscribers, which is quite amazing considering this channel has only been going for a few months at this point. But if you wish to support us and support our efforts to get out the truth to more people, why it's so important that today we support Ukraine, then please do like, subscribe to this channel, leave your comments below and share the video with others, and consider becoming a channel member. Ukraine has been systematically destroying not only the oil industry within Russia, but also going after key industries, specifically the industries that are involved in producing goods for the war effort. And this is something that is having a serious effect on Russia's ability to wage war. We know that the attacks that Ukraine has carried out have reduced Russia's ability to produce oil by nearly 40%. But there's something else that's very important about this, is that the United States is picking up its pressure on China as well as India to stop buying Russian oil. Now, if they were to stop buying Russian oil, this would be significant. This is not a small thing. This is a very big thing. China and India combined purchase about 85% of Russia's oil. But if they were to stop buying it, what would happen to that 85%? Let's imagine they even just halved it, and they were to only buy 43%. Well, what would that mean? Well, that would mean massive deficits for Russia. Keep in mind, 40 to 45% of Russia's national budget It comes from the revenues they get from oil. But today, they're not going to be able to get that revenue. It's becoming ever more likely that they are going to be running out of cash. And that's why we see these attacks. And it gets back to our initial point. Why does Russia continue these massive assaults on Ukraine? Well, for one, time is running out. But two, look at the attacks that Ukraine has carried out. 58 Russian energy sites have been struck since August. If that's just in the past few months, what will happen if this continues for another 6 months? Look at the Lukoil's Kostova refinery. That was a precision strike by the Ukrainians. And that's not small. That's between 1.6 to 2.5 million barrels per year, which will not be coming to the market. Look at the Saratov refinery. That attack is not small either. We're talking about another 36 million barrels per year that will not be produced. Today, as these attacks are making not only gasoline more expensive, but diesel is also climbing. We see that this price is now putting pressure on their agriculture, is affecting their trucking, and all of this is coming right as winter nears. This is something that is going to be very difficult for the Russians to continue fighting. But there's something else going on. The Russians are trying to find solutions. They're trying their very best. There's problems with the fact that simply within the gasoline that's produced, there's not the right combinations, and a lot of cars cannot handle them. Imagine this, but imagine internationally how the Russians feel, what they see when they look out at their so-called empire. Look at the naval humiliation that occurred with the submarine Novorossiysk. Near France, it had to come up. Its navigation, its periscope, its software systems all malfunctioned. This is a very important submarine for the Russians. They don't have lots of them, but today they have ever fewer of them. And those that are not attacked by the Ukrainians are falling apart because of the Russians' own incompetence. Today, the Russians are going to have more problems, though, when they're trying to deal with something like this ship. This ship is supposed to get back to port around the 21st of October, but today it's unclear if it'll be able to do that. Physically, how will it transit the 3,500 kilometers or 2,200 miles that it has between the Channel and the Baltic? Today, it's going to be very difficult for them. But with their budget's so strained, even if they got home, how will they fix it? Debt service consumes about 8% of spending this year. Last year's, it was only about 5.4%. That's a pretty steep increase. But also consider this. Payments reach in the tens of billions of dollars just in the first 3 quarters of this year. With double-digit yields, new issuances are increasingly covering interest, but not investment. The Russians are not making money. No matter what they look at, do they see profit? They just see problems. And that's why India's new calculus, the way that it is looking at energy today, is such an important moment. India is now hesitating on added Russian oil. 4 major refineries await formal guidance, and there's compliance uncertainties and other problems that they're having. But at the end of the day, there's a lack of decision. Do the Indians really want to be married to the Russians? It seems very likely that they do not wish to be. But today, there's something else going on. We see that for the Russians, there is a problem that the Indians realize that losing the relationship with the United States might not be worth it. It might be a risk too great. Though India historically is a country that likes to be independent, during the Soviet period and during the Cold War, it didn't really want to be aligned with either the West or with the socialist countries. But today, with the rise of Modi, who is a Hindu nationalist, he's not very keen to have the United States tell him what to do, to threaten his country. And that might provoke him to do things that we yet cannot foresee. But at present, at least there are the signs that he's concerned. Signs that perhaps he doesn't want to be married to Vladimir Putin. But either way, today what we see is that there are combined effects of things going on. The pushing from the United States, the pushing from Kyiv for the United States to give more support, for the United States to use its diplomatic weight to get other countries on board with Ukraine, but also from the European partners who are continuing to supply Ukraine with what it needs to continue waging war and to continue saving its citizens' lives. And all of this are things that we are contributing to with our efforts to get Ukraine life-saving drones. So today, Ukraine understands very well. It must have a combined effect. Impose persistent cost on Moscow, range, precision, volume. They all must change planning behavior. And the Kremlin now expects immediate penalties for any sort of escalation. They understand the Ukraine can return the favor. So today, they are getting prepared for what is coming. And that's why the Russians, though they act like everything's fine, they act tough, they act sure of themselves. We know that they're not so sure. We know that their rear assets are facing very unpredictable futures. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And consider becoming a channel member today. And as always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.